Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon, and welcome back to Marotta Media. It's been a while since my last review. I apologize for that. It's been a busy month, dude. I'll just say that. I have seen a lot of movies, and there have been some movies I've seen that I wanted to make a review on, but when I had time to make a review, I wanted to just relax and do other things, so I never got around to it, so I'm sorry. But I'm back today because the movie that I'm going to be talking about today is one that I just had to make a review for as soon as I watched it, and that was Barbarian. In Barbarian, we follow a young woman named Tess as she goes to an Airbnb that she's renting in Detroit. But when she gets there, she finds that someone is already staying there, and both of them soon learn there are more sinister things to be afraid of inside the house than each other. Barbarian is a movie that I knew little to nothing about. Honestly, I hadn't even heard of this movie up until about a few weeks ago. But from everything I was reading, I was told that you need to go into this movie knowing as little information as possible, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't even watch the full trailer for this movie. I only saw snippets and clips, and I knew what the plot synopsis was, but other than that, I knew nothing. And after watching it, I'm so happy that I went into it that way, because Barbarian is one of the best horror movies of the year and one of my favorite movies of the year so far. Now, like I said, I want people to be surprised when they go see this movie if they watch this review and they haven't seen it, so I will do my absolute best to not give too much away. However, there is a point that I want to make later on in this review that may require spoilers, but don't worry, I will warn you when we get to that point. Well, first, let me start by saying the acting by this entire ensemble is fantastic. The star of Barbarian is a woman named Georgina Campbell, and up until this movie, I have never seen her in anything, and I hope to see her in more things going forward because she was great. Bill Skarsgård is also in the movie, and he is fantastic as he always is. And Justin Long is in this movie as well, and he's terrific. I honestly don't remember the last movie that I saw Justin Long in. I feel like it was fairly recently, but I don't know for sure. And this is the second horror movie I've seen Justin Long in where he plays a complete asshole. The first being Kevin Smith's Tusk, although Barbarian is a good movie and Tusk is absolutely atrocious. But like I said, Justin Long is great in this as well, and due to his background as a comedic actor, he's more of the comic relief character in the movie. And he's able to incorporate humor into this horror movie so well, and that's something that the script itself does stupendously. The horror elements of Barbarian are legitimately terrifying. Now, I'm not a person who gets scared by horror movies very easily, and Barbarian was much the same, but there were a few moments where my spine was tingling. And there are quite a few tense and scary moments, and they're interrupted by humor, and you would think that that would derail the pacing, but it doesn't. It just flows miraculously. Without getting into too much detail, there is one particular scene where a certain character discovers something very scary and sinister, and instead of being frightened by it, they are instead excited because they can possibly profit off of it. That is all I'll say, but oh my god, it was so funny. But I think the transitions between genres work so well because this movie is edited very well. The editing is very slow and it really takes its time to try to build up suspense and tension. You're just expecting something, anything to happen at any moment, but it just keeps you guessing. And there were a few scenes where something extreme is about to happen and it cuts to a comic relief moment. For example, there's a scene where there's something suspenseful happening and then there's a big reveal, and then it cuts to a character driving along the highway singing in their car. And at that moment, I just kind of threw my hands up and said, "What the fuck?" But I said it in like the most sincere way possible. I wasn't mad. I was just so surprised and very entertained. It was just so off-putting that it was kind of hilarious. I didn't see it coming, and that's what I loved most about Barbarian. This movie is so unpredictable. There was no point throughout this film where I felt like I knew where it was going or I knew what was going to happen next. I was in the dark the entire time, and that is just the sign of a phenomenal script. And that will lead me into my next point, because when I found out who the writer and director of Barbarian was, I was shocked. The writer and director of this movie is none other than Zach Krager of The Whitest Kids You Know. Do you remember Whitest Kids You Know? They were like a comedy troupe in the 2000s and I think the early 2010s. I was actually a pretty big fan of theirs. I thought their skits were very, very funny. But if you don't remember Zach Krager, here, let me refresh your memory with one of Whitest Kids You Know's most popular sketches.
Mr. President, will you please be quiet? Suck my presidential cock, bitch! You fat-ass piece of shit! You tubbalard-looking motherfucker!
Yeah, that guy. The guy playing Abraham Lincoln in a comedy sketch wrote and directed one of the most original horror movies that I've ever seen. Bravo to you, sir. However, this is not his debut when it comes to directing and writing movies because he did co-write and co-direct a comedy called Miss March in the 2000s. And I haven't seen that movie in a really long time, but even as a kid, I knew that it was pretty terrible. It had some funny moments, but overall it was kind of forgettable. But if he keeps this up, if he keeps writing movies like Barbarian, then bro, I cannot wait to see what he does next. However, Barbarian is not perfect. The pacing in the first act does tend to drag a little bit. When we first meet our central two characters, Georgina Campbell's Tess and Bill Skarsgård's Keith, both of them just spend a good maybe 20-30 minutes just talking and getting to know one another. Now, even though I was invested in these conversations and getting to know these characters, it did tend to go on a little bit longer than I feel it needed to. And the reason Tess is in Detroit is because she's there for a job interview, and we actually get to see her on this job interview. And she tells the woman interviewing her where she's staying, and I guess where she's staying is a horrible neighborhood, which is very evident if you actually look at the neighborhood. And the lady tells Tess to get out of there, but she insists that she's fine, and she says, okay, just watch your back. And nothing really ever came of it. I was kind of expecting this to come back in some sort of capacity, but it never did, so ultimately it just felt kind of pointless. I mean, there is a fairly big plot point that happens when Tess returns to the Airbnb from the interview, so maybe that was its only purpose, but overall I felt they could have just left that out. And this next point that I'm going to make is where I'm going to get into spoiler territory, but I just have to mention this and I just want to see what other people have to say if they've seen the movie. So if you do not want spoilers for Barbarian, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen this movie, then please skip to this part of the video. I think it's implied, or maybe it was explicitly said and I just missed it, but I really want to know who posted this ad for the Airbnb, because it's revealed that Justin Long's character AJ is the owner of the house, and when he makes his way back to the house to sell it in order to make some money, he's confused when he sees luggage there, and he calls some woman who must be in charge of the house, I'm not really sure who it was, and he asks her, hey, has anyone been staying here? And she says, no one stayed there for a few weeks. And I thought, okay, well, if the people who own the house and are in charge of maintaining it did not rent it out, then who did? Was it the father who AJ soon discovers in the catacombs underneath the house? Or who was it? Did he post it to lure more victims to the house for his inbred wife-daughter? I don't know. That's just something that bothered me, and I thought very long about that, and I'm fairly certain that it wasn't ever explicitly mentioned. I could be wrong, but someone, please let me know. But a comparison that I've heard a lot, and I think it's absolutely spot on, I've heard people say that Barbarian is 2022's Malignant. Malignant referring to the horror movie from James Wan that came out last year. Now, I loved Malignant. It was one of the craziest, if not the craziest movie that I've ever seen. That's a movie, if I could watch it for the first time again, I would absolutely love to because it was quite an experience. But I do see the comparison to Malignant because Barbarian is a horror movie that kind of just came out of nowhere and shocked people with its insane content. Granted, I do not believe that Barbarian was as insane as Malignant. This is just my opinion, but I just kept waiting for that one huge bonkers moment to happen in Barbarian. Similar to the police station scene in Malignant, I was hoping for a moment like that, but it never came. Now, that's not to say that there aren't bonkers moments in Barbarian, because believe me, there is. But I just don't think there was anything of that magnitude. But I can't really fault the movie for that. I'll just have to blame my own expectations for that one. But in the end, Barbarian is an incredibly creepy, suspenseful, hilarious, and most of all, original horror movie. This is quite an impressive horror debut for Zach Cregger. And like I said, if he keeps making things like this, I cannot wait to see what he does next. Overall, I would give Barbarian an 8 out of 10. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Barbarian. If you guys saw this movie, let me know what you thought about it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was as bonkers as Malignant? If you guys like this review, be sure to hit that thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe. If you want to see my previous reviews, I'll link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.